Funds that are focused on socially responsible investing have been a rare bright spot in this year's market meltdown. We've got recent data that finds that for the first 4 months of this year, investors poured a record $12.2 billion into funds that they say invest in environmental, social, and governance practices. UBS is out with some new details on this, and in an interview you'll see first on Yahoo Finance, we'd like to welcome in Andrew Lee. He is head of sustainable and impact investing at UBS Global Wealth Management. Good morning to you, Andrew. He's joining us on the phone. Is there something about sustainable investing that maybe makes it a little more resilient than other areas in times like this?
Well, I think the focus on environmental, social, and governance factors across a range of different areas really does help to, focus on which companies are better prepared to manage through the crisis, which companies are better prepared in terms of human capital management. And these are all signals that long-term investors are really looking for. So yes, I think it does help with downside protection, but it's also how are you managing for the long term?
And what are you looking at in terms of, I really enjoyed this research, social themes. How can investors play this?
Sure. Social actually refers to a couple of different things, right? It's about how companies manage social issues, including employee health and safety, supply chain resilience, and workforce management related to retention. But it's also about social themes and the longer term opportunities that investors can really look to and want exposure to. So think about broader issues that are related to COVID-19, like healthcare and access to medicines, but also more broadly related to things like sustainable tourism. You see an increase in terms of social bond issuance. More recently, as a result of the desire to fund some of the social issues that are arising from the COVID-19 health crisis and its aftermath. So these are opportunities beyond the environmental opportunities that many people associate with sustainable investing.
Andrew, when you're out there talking to companies, at what have they started to cut back on any of these socially friendly initiatives? It was all a talk coming into this year, but in many respects, it's situations like this when we are in a severe recession, a lot of these initiatives get pulled back because they add a lot of cost to the business.
I think management really needs to focus on running their businesses through the recession. So there's certainly balances in terms of priorities, but we think that it's actually particularly important to focus on the social initiatives and how they deal with many of these areas as they start to manage through. It's a signal, again, as I was saying, of how well they can manage and how well positioned they are for the long term. So I think it's a balance from a management perspective, but we continue to think that social is going to be important for management teams. It's going to be important for investors. We think there's an opportunity for investors to engage where they think that the priorities aren't being properly balanced by management. So, we'd expect it to continue to be a priority.
Andrew, does investing in ESG fall along demographic lines? Meaning, are you seeing younger folks looking for opportunity in this space versus older investors? And also, for that matter, does it break down in terms of gender? Do more women or men tend to want to look for opportunities in this space?
Well, we certainly do see a bias amongst young investors, amongst female investors, and amongst our most wealthy segments to invest in sustainability. So yes, there are some trends, but actually more broadly, we do see a recognition amongst many of our investors across segments, both from a wealth and a demographic perspective, because they really recognize the fact that ESG, environmental, social, and governance factors do relate to financial returns over time, especially where they're relevant. And I think crises like the COVID-19 health crisis that we're living through right now are really illustrations of the linkages between ESG, the economy, and financial markets. So we see that recognition, and we also see it from business owners, interestingly, where business owners and entrepreneurs who run their own businesses see the fact that whether it's an environmental issue or a social initiative, those benefits are good for society and the environment, but they also drop to the bottom line. And so they clearly recognize it in their own businesses, and they're able to recognize that from an investment perspective, it should also be additive. So we do certainly see some of those trends, and we expect those to persist, but we see a broad interest in it across our broad client base.
What do you say to investors who might go, you know what? ESG in my portfolio, it's really very niche. It might even be a fad. What do you say to those investors?
I don't think they're looking at, I think environmental, social, and governance factors actually are additive from a long-term perspective. We've certainly seen the impact from a performance perspective, as you referenced in the first quarter. And I think generally speaking, people should say, look, this is a more holistic approach. Investing is really about taking the fullest picture of all of the different factors that could potentially affect my investments over the long run, whether that's on a portfolio basis or on an individual investment basis. And so, the fact that environmental factors, yes, they are something that people care about, but actually they do relate directly to, long-term profitability of many companies, dependent on sector and focus area. But think about from a cost perspective, or think about from a long-term climate risk perspective, some of the risk factors that are potentially presented. So investors who aren't considering environmental, social, and governance, especially understanding where they're relevant to the company's business model or industry exposure, they're probably not thinking about the long-term picture or the full holistic set of information that's required to make a long-term judgment. So we've seen a move both among professional investors as well as personal investors to incorporate those factors. I think it's going to be important from a long-term perspective, and it's our view that doing that is really going to be the future of investing, if not already.
All right, Andrew Lee, Head of Sustainable and Impact Investing at UBS Global Wealth Management. Some great insights this morning. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.